Thank you very much for those inspiring words, General Shelton. Well, now it's my honor and privilege to introduce somebody who literally needs no introduction, but that's not going to stop me from introducing him. Because before he was a household name and before he was America's mayor, I knew Rudy Giuliani as a fellow Reaganite, a fellow appointee of President Reagan in the Reagan administration. He joined the Reagan administration in 1981 as the #3 ranking person at the Department of Justice as the U.S. Associate Attorney General. And from there, he went on in 1983 to become U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. And I will tell you, I remember his tenure well there because this is a man who is willing to take on anybody. He went after mob bosses. He went after corrupt union officials, and he was even willing to take on corruption on Wall Street. He is, of course, most remembered for his role after the United States was attacked and New York was so devastatingly attacked in 2001. Please welcome to the stage Rudy Giuliani, America's mayor.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you very much. Thank you, Linda. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much, and thank you so much for coming. And as Linda said, it is very encouraging to see that we have so many more people here than we did. I think it was just a little over a year ago when we were here, which means that what we're trying to present, what we're trying to get the American people to understand, what we're trying to get the people of Arizona to understand is happening. And this is very, very difficult because we're trying to break through an administration and a media that refuses to tell this message. I have never seen anything like this, and I've been in public office a good deal of my life and involved in public affairs all my life. I have never seen anything like this. The inability to get this story across. Do you know what Kayla Mueller, who came from Prescott, Arizona, and those faces you see right there, representing the 120,000 members of the MEK that have been slaughtered, and my 343 firefighters who died on September 11, and my 2,700 citizens, innocent people who died on September 11, and the soldiers at Fort Hood who died with a man yelling, "Allah Akbar," or the Jewish people who were just sitting there being shot and killed just a few weeks ago in France because they're Jewish. You know what they all have in common? They have in common a movement the President of the United States will not recognize. They have been murdered, they have been slaughtered, they have been raped, they have been tortured, they have been beheaded, they have been burned by a movement that the President of the United States will not recognize. What is wrong with him? Is there no passion? Is there no passion for the lives of these innocent people? Is there no caring for them? Do you know what the slaughter at Fort Hood was described as? Workplace violence. Workplace violence. This is a captain in the United States Army who had become a jihadist 2 years before, who was communicating with Afghanistan and Pakistan and Yemen. It doesn't take a genius to figure out the cause for which he was murdering. He told us, Allah Akbar. But the President of the United States doesn't see the connection. Just the other day, he called the slaughter of those Jewish people in France a random act. Mr. President, wake up! Come off the golf course! Come back on Earth! These people have all been murdered by a movement. I agree, it's diverse. I agree it has many forms. Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Al-Qaeda in Yemen. Self-generated jihadists like the Boston Marathon killers. But it's connected. It's connected by two things. It's connected by a common ideology, which is the misuse of the Islamic religion for the purpose of defending the slaughter and desecration of human beings. And it's united by one other thing: money and support from the regime of Iran. Those are the two things that connect it. And our president is sitting down and negotiating with the regime of Iran. Iran has probably been responsible for more American deaths than any singular terrorist group. It is undisputably the largest supporter of terrorism in the world. It just, once again, we found out was responsible for the murder of all of those Jewish people in Argentina back in 1994. We will never forget the American hostages that were held by the Iranians. It seems to me President Obama has forgotten it. I haven't forgotten it. I remember every day of it. And I remember Linda, they were held for months and months and days and weeks as they looked into the eyes of a weak president, Jimmy Carter. And they were never released. And the moment they looked into Ronald Reagan's eyes, the moment he put his hand on the Bible and put his hand up, they released them. Well, once again, they are looking into weak eyes, the eyes of our president, begging for an agreement with Iran at all cost. So let's review the agreement, because this is really what's at stake here. And then one other thing that's so important. Iran wants, it says, the peaceful use of nuclear power. Iran has 300 years of natural gas and oil reserves, and they haven't started fracking or hydraulic drilling yet. They may have 1,000 years of reserves. I'm an expert on energy because that's what my law firm does. Iran does not need a nuclear power plant for power. They got plenty of energy to export to the rest of the world. There is no reason in the world for them to have the peaceful use of nuclear power. Maybe France needs it. Maybe countries without natural resources need it. But Iran doesn't need it. So why have they been doing this? They've been doing this because they want to become a nuclear power. Not only that, they have written that, they have said that, they have described that. The president reformer who runs Iran, Rouhani, in 03 and 05, continued to enrich uranium while they had a standstill agreement with us. He did it secretly and bragged about it, and we're negotiating with him. This is like playing poker with a guy who cheated you twice before. You know who does that? A moron. An agreement with Iran with regard to nuclear power should be very simple. Iran should not be allowed to have any form of nuclear power. Most of us, maybe not all of us in this room, lived through the Cold War. Those of us in the Reagan administration certainly remember it. General Shelton fought it, the Cold War, because it wasn't always a Cold War. And the big fear during the Cold War was that a madman would come along and be able to get his finger on the button in the US or in Russia, and all of a sudden we could destroy the world. We saw movies about that. We saw Broadway plays about that. We saw comedies about that. And we read books about that. And we were afraid of that. And it never happened, thank God. These people in Iran, the Ayatollah and the mullahs, have already told us they are insane. They have already described to us in words and deeds the actions of insane people. I didn't say irrational, I said insane. I believe the Ayatollah is truly insane. He lives in a different world than the real world in which we live, which is probably the best definition of insanity you can have. He's like the guy walking around Bellevue Hospital thinking he's George Washington. He's a madman. He's announced that he wants to destroy the state of Israel. And we are upset that Prime Minister Netanyahu wants to come here and defend his country when someone who is a few hundred miles away wants nuclear weapons and has threatened to destroy his country of 6 or 7 million people. It's smaller than New York City. Believe me, when I was mayor of New York, if someone threatened to destroy New York City, I would go anywhere, any place, anytime, and I wouldn't give a damn what the President of the United States thought, to defend my country. That is a patriot. That's a man who loves his people. That's a man who protects his people. That's a man who fights for his people, unlike our president. 12 red lines to Saudi Arabia. 12 red lines, they all turned pink. And the last one turned yellow. He backed down to Assad 12 times. You don't think that had a connection to what Putin did in Crimea? If you don't understand world history, you don't understand world diplomacy, and you don't understand power politics. Putin looked one time at Obama and he said, I can take advantage of this man because he is weak. So we are here to appeal to you. We know your senators, particularly Senator McCain, understand this as well or better than I do. President of the United States should not be allowed to reach an agreement with Iran without presenting it to the United States Congress. This is not a dictatorship. This is not a country run by one man. This is not a country run by one branch of the government. The Congress of the United States speaks for the people of the United States. This agreement is too important to be imposed on us. The way President Obama has ignored the laws in so many other ways and gotten away with it because he has a press who defends him no matter what he does. I don't need the water. A little scotch wouldn't be bad. So that's my first point. My second will be briefer. And it picks up on what General Shelton said at the end, and we can't forget it. As we look at that big picture of an agreement with Iran and what it might mean and what it should contain and how it should be reviewed by Congress and how we can't let this president get away with reaching an agreement without going to Congress so it can be reviewed and carefully reviewed. The second thing we cannot forget, and many of you who have been involved in this for a long time know about this, and many of you don't. We have almost 3,000 people who are in Iraq right now. They are listening to this. I think they're listening to it live, but they certainly will be listening to it on tape very, very quickly. They are being held hostage there. They're being held hostage in a camp called Liberty. Over 100 of them have been killed in that camp. It is a concentration camp. It's a disgusting place. And it's a killing field where the Iraqis or the Iranians working with the Iraqis will come in and shoot some of them. Now, you say, well, my goodness, this is going on all over the world, and there are many situations like the one I've just described, of people who are being tortured and people who are being treated horribly. And because, again, I believe our president doesn't see this. We live in a cruel and we live in a mean world to some extent. They're not all like us. The president doesn't seem to understand that. Some of them don't want to negotiate. Some of them just want to murder and kill and maim. But there's something different about these 3,000 people. Each one of them has a piece of paper signed by a member of the American military at a high level, giving them the protection of the Geneva Convention and the United States. They did that in 2003 when they laid down their arms to protect themselves so that they would be protected by the United States military. To me, and I know to your senator, because he and I have talked about this, Senator McCain, this is a solemn pledge. Not of one general or colonel, not of one president or the other, but of the United States of America. Each one of these people is in possession of such a piece of paper, and we have dishonored it. We've left him there. The State Department under Hillary Clinton and now John Kerry puts every obstacle in the way of their either coming to the United States or getting to other countries. We've gotten some out. If this were an administration of dignity and honor, if this was an administration and a president who truly understood what it meant to be an honorable man and an honorable president, that piece of paper would be vindicated. That piece of paper would be honored. Instead, it is being ignored because he is so stupidly trying to reach an agreement with Iran. He wants nothing to stand in the way of it. So far, 100 people at least have been killed because of that stupidity. All the President of the United States has to do is send 5 or 6, or the general could probably figure it out better, 7 airplanes to Baghdad with appropriate troops, say, get the hell out of the way, and take all those people, put them on a plane, and bring them to Arizona, New York, California, New Mexico, or they could fill half an apartment building in New York. I mean, this is a minuscule number of people. This is not a big thing to do. And we're leaving them there to get killed and to be sitting ducks And it's because the president is so desperate to make an agreement that finally is against our interests in any way. And if we are not going to live up to our word of protecting them by taking them out of there because we granted them asylum status, if we're not going to do that, then let's give them the arms to defend themselves. Because they were pretty darn good at it before. And I'm sure they'd be very good at it again. The MEK, the organization we're talking about, answers a question I am asked all the time. Where are the moderate Muslims? Where are the Muslims who stand up against terrorism? Where are the Muslims who are outraged by the fact that there are some Muslims, not a majority, not an overwhelming majority, but a fairly large number, supported by a state Iran? Where are those Muslims who condemn that? Well, I'm going to tell you where they are. They're right here. That's the MEK. Organization, the interim president of that organization is a woman. Women can't drive in Saudi Arabia. The head of this organization is a woman. You saw those pictures of those gatherings, I believe it was in Paris. 100,000 people showed up in Paris. This is not a small organization. General Shelton and I have been before hundreds of thousands of displaced Iranians who are ready to take their country back. And here's their platform. Here's their charter. Here's their constitution. It's going to sound awfully familiar. They believe in free elections. They don't want to control Iran. They want the Iranian people to have an election in which the leader of Iran is freely elected. They want an Iran that is dedicated to religious freedom, safety for Jews and Christians, safety for Muslims who may not want to practice their faith, or Muslims who may want to practice their faith in a different way than other Muslims. They want an Iran that gives women equal rights with men. They want an Iran that's built on the rule of law, and they want an Iran that is a non-nuclear Iran. That's the alternative. That's the alternative to the Islamic fundamentalist extremists. President Obama should embrace them. President Obama should save them. He should embrace them. And he should put them up as a model of what is needed in the Islamic world. And instead, what he's doing, in my humble view, is selling us out to Iran. It must be stopped. It has to be stopped. Our last resort is our Congress. But you know something? Our Congress is always our last resort, because it is our Congress that represents our people. And I implore our Congress to stop this weak president for doing things that will be so difficult to reverse that even if the next president were a Ronald Reagan, it might be difficult to reverse. After all, we are never going to bring Kayla Mueller back to life. And we are never going to bring those people there back to life. And I am never going to have my 10 close friends that I lost on September 11 who were killed by Islamic extremist terrorists. I'm never going to have them ever again. And I'm never going to have my 343 firefighters. Never going to have them ever again. We can't bring them back, but we can make sure there aren't more of them. This president isn't doing it. This president is moving us in a much worse and really frightening direction. And Congress must stop it, and the people must stand up and say, no, 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 we will not sell out to Iran the way Chamberlain sold out to Hitler. No!